America has a long and terrifying history of serial killers whose crimes left an unforgettable scar on society. These individuals, often outwardly normal or even charming, hid dark and violent urges that shock the world when exposed. In this documentary, we will uncover the stories of 5 of the most infamous serial killers in American history. First, we'll meet Ted Bundy, the seemingly handsome law student who lured dozens of women to their deaths with his charm and deceptive tricks. Then, Jeffrey Dahmer, known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, whose gruesome acts of murder and cannibalism horrified the world. We will then turn to Wayne Gacy, the man who performed as a clown at children's parties while secretly murdering young men and burying them beneath his home. Next, Ed Gein, whose twisted crimes in rural Wisconsin inspired some of the most iconic horror movies ever made. Finally, we will examine the case of David Berkowitz, the self-proclaimed son of Sam, who terrorized New York City in the 1970s with a string of shootings. Each of these men represents a different face of evil, from the manipulative charmer to the cold-blooded monster. Their crimes not only destroyed countless lives but also forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, psychology, and the darkness that can hide in plain sight. Ted Bundy is often considered the most notorious serial killer in the United States. Born in 1946, Bundy appeared to live a normal life. He was intelligent, well-spoken, and even studied law. Behind the mask, however, was a predator who murdered dozens of young women across multiple states during the 1970s. Bundy's method was as clever as it was terrifying. He pretended to be injured, often wearing a fake cast or using crutches, and asked women for help. Once they let their guard down, he kidnapped and killed them. Witnesses often remembered his charm and politeness, making his crimes even more shocking. His first confirmed murders began in Washington in 1974. In one chilling case, 2 women vanished on the same day from Lake Sammamish Park after being approached by a man named Ted Bundy's Volkswagen Beetle became infamous as the car in which many victims took their last ride. Bundy was finally caught in Utah after a failed abduction. He escaped from custody twice, once even jumping out of a courthouse window. After his second escape, he murdered again in Florida, brutally attacking sorority women at Florida State University. Bundy was sentenced to death in 1979 despite his attempts to delay execution by confessing to more murders. He was executed in 1989. His legacy remains one of manipulation, deception, and horror, a reminder that evil can wear a friendly smile. Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, committed some of the most disturbing crimes in American history. Born in 1960, Dahmer's fascination with death began in childhood. As an adult, he lured young men to his apartment, where he drugged, murdered, and dismembered them. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer killed 17 young men and boys. What horrified the public most was his practice of cannibalism and his attempt to create zombie-like victims by drilling into their skulls. When police finally arrested him in 1991, they discovered human remains, photographs, and evidence of unimaginable crimes in his apartment. Dahmer's life also raises questions about missed chances to stop him. In one case, police returned a drugged victim to Dahmer after believing it was a simple domestic dispute. That boy was murdered shortly after. These failures made Dahmer's crimes even more infamous. He was sentenced to 15 life terms in prison. In 1994, he was killed by a fellow inmate. His story remains one of the darkest in true crime history, a chilling tale of obsession, control, and the destruction of human life. Wayne Gacy was known in his community as a friendly, hard-working man who often dressed up as a clown to entertain children at local parties. But behind this mask of kindness was a murderer responsible for the deaths of at least 33 young men and boys. Born in 1942, Gacy lived a seemingly normal suburban life in Illinois. He owned a construction business and was active in local politics. However, he lured young men to his home, promising work or simply tricking them. Once inside, he would handcuff them under the guise of a magic trick, then assault and strangle them. Most of his victims were buried in the crawl space beneath his house, a chilling discovery that shocked the world when police uncovered the remains. Others were discarded in rivers nearby. Gacy was arrested in 1978, tried and sentenced to death. He spent 14 years on death row before being executed in 1994. The case of John Wayne Gacy revealed the terrifying truth that monsters can hide in plain sight, even behind a painted clown smile. Ed Gein, known as the Butcher of Plainfield, was not a prolific killer like Bundy or Gacy, but his crimes had an enormous cultural impact. Born in 1906 in Wisconsin, Gein lived a reclusive life under the control of his strict and abusive mother. When police entered his farmhouse in 1957, they uncovered horrors that seemed too grotesque to be real. Furniture made from human bones, bowls crafted from skulls, and masks sewn from human skin were among the discoveries. Gein admitted to killing at least 2 women, but much of his collection came from robbing graves. Though Gein was declared mentally insane and spent his life in a psychiatric institution, his crimes inspired some of the most famous horror characters in film, including Norman Bates from Psycho, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. Ed Gein remains a symbol of rural horror, a real-life monster who blurred the line between myth and reality. David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam, terrorized New York City during the summer of 1976 armed. With a .44 caliber revolver, he targeted young couples, often while they sat in parked cars. His attacks left 6 dead and 7 wounded, creating widespread panic in a city already struggling with crime. What made Berkowitz especially notorious were the letters he sent to police and newspapers, mocking authorities and signing them as Son of Sam. The media frenzy around his crimes made him a household name and spread fear throughout New York. Berkowitz was finally captured in August 1911 after police traced a parking ticket near the scene of one of the shootings. He confessed to the crimes, claiming he was commanded to kill by a demon speaking through his neighbor's dog. He was sentenced to 6 life sentences and remains in prison to this day. Over time, Berkowitz claimed to have found religion and expressed remorse. But for many, he will always be remembered as the man who brought fear to the streets of New York. The stories of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Ed Gein, and David Berkowitz reveal the darkest depths of human nature. Each of them came from different backgrounds and lived very different lives, yet all carried within them an ability to deceive, manipulate, and destroy. What makes their cases so haunting is not only the brutality of their crimes, but also the reminder that evil often hides behind ordinary faces: a student, a neighbor, a clown, a quiet man in a small town, or even someone sitting beside you on a bus. Their legacies forced society to confront uncomfortable questions about psychology, justice, and the limits of understanding human behavior. They changed how law enforcement investigated crimes, how the media covered violence, and how the public perceived safety. Above all, they remind us of the fragility of trust and the importance of vigilance. While their names remain etched in history, it is important to remember the countless victims whose lives were stolen. Behind every headline, there were daughters, sons, friends, and loved ones who never came home. In the end, the most powerful lesson we can draw from these horrific cases is not fascination with the killers themselves, but compassion for the victims and determination to prevent such tragedies from happening again.